Welcome to the Creative Endeavour podcast. This is the podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. It's real conversations with real artists. And in this episode, I'm talking to somebody very, very special to me. I'm talking to Cody Oldham, who's coming to me from Colorado in the United States. Now, if you missed Cody's first episode with me way back when, I think we recorded that in 2019. And if you've been under a rock and you have no idea who Cody Oldham is, then let me give you a little bit of the backstory here, because Cody's just an extraordinary young artist. He's doing some massive things, and when you hear that he's only 19 years old, it really can be quite inspiring and motivating. This guy is just really kicking some massive goals with his art. Now, I first met Cody when he was 12 years old. A while ago, when I first started my YouTube channel, in fact, I reached out to my mailing list and I was offering kind of one-on-one coaching, creative coaching I called it, where I would help you with your creative journey and give you some tips and tricks and some strategies to help you become a more successful professional artist. And of course, I've been a professional working artist now for 20 years, so I felt that I had something to offer. And so we were booking a few of those sessions, and we got this email from Cody. And when my wife read this email, she immediately said, you've got to read this. And I was touched, and I had to reach out to Cody and talk with him and hear about his story. And right away, I realized that Cody was very different. Here's a 12-year-old kid who was so serious, so fired up about his art, so driven and motivated that it really put my efforts to shame. I thought I was a pretty serious guy, even as a kid, but I had nothing on Cody. And then when I saw the quality of his work, good night, for a kid to be painting like that. Are you kidding me? It was really, really incredible. Now, fast forward, Cody's 19. He's exhibiting with some reputable galleries. His work went from selling in the hundreds to now selling in the thousands. And he's getting ready right now for a major solo show to take place in Santa Fe. Now, just on a little side note, not only does the Oldham household have a creative genius in their midst, but they also do something pretty special. They rehabilitate mountain lions. So if you're in North America, then you no doubt know what a mountain lion is. They can be sometimes called pumas or cougars, but these are pretty serious big cats. They're an elusive and majestic creature that prowls the American wilderness. Now, unfortunately, sometimes these cats get caught in traps or on fences or can even get hit by cars. And then it becomes the task of some very special people to rehabilitate these animals back to health and then release them back into the wild. And that's what Cody's family does. And so here, there's actually mountain lions in the house. Cody was coming to me from a corner of the living room because he had to give up his studio to a poor mountain lion that had its paw trapped in a trap. And so he wasn't in his usual surrounds, but still the call held up pretty good. We got some good audio out of it. Now, Cody's family is really experienced in rehabilitating these cats, and they have to go through all the normal regulations and procedures to be able to do it legally. But can you imagine for a second what it would be like to be growing up so close to these creatures? And then how that might fuel your art if you were to paint them. And it was so cool. As I'm talking to Cody, I could see that he was working on a knockout painting of a couple of cougars. And he was right in the middle of the process of laying down that paint. Now, of course, if you want to see the video version of this podcast, I've started to put these episodes out on my main YouTube channel. So you'll find a link to that in the description below. But Cody's also very kindly offered to share his process with some higher resolution images with my online academy, so we can see how he starts his paintings and how they progress through those stages of blocking in and modeling to the final detail. So if you want to find that, as well as exclusive extra content that I don't upload anywhere else, I'm talking tips and tricks to help you with your drawing and painting, but also some real actionable strategies to help you take things a bit further as a professional working artist. So join our exclusive community. You're going to find a link to Tisch Academy in the show notes. Now, if you aren't already following Cody, make sure you do so. He can be found at Cody_Oldham_artist. That last name is spelled Oldham, and that's on Instagram. You can also be found at CodyOldham.com. I can't wait to share this conversation with Cody with you. This was really inspiring. Here's Cody and the Creative Endeavour. Cody Oldham, welcome to the Creative Endeavour podcast.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It is a pleasure to be here.
Oh man, I'm excited for this. I'm excited for this. Now, people would have heard from the introduction that we've been talking on and off for several years since you were about 12. Okay.
Well,
so
yeah,
it's been a really interesting road, my friend. And here you are. You're in Colorado. You're now 19, just turned 19. You're painting some killer stuff. Cody, why don't we kick things off here? Because you've been on the Creative Endeavour before, but you were interviewing me, and this time I want to interview you. I really want to hear about and give me a snapshot of what is going on now. What are you doing with your art? How's it going? You're just painting some killer stuff.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, right now, if you're talking about the current projects I have going on right now, this thing behind me, this is a 24 by 30. I just got going of a couple mountain lions. I'm kind of trying out some new techniques right now. Still kind of being kind of I'd say, well, what is the word? Not too far into the process or into the journey of painting itself. I'm still exploring so many other techniques. So it's like, well, maybe I want to try something a little bit looser, or, I'm going to try something kind of photorealism here. And every project presents a new opportunity and a new challenge. And with this particular project, I'm kind of going in with like, okay, maybe I'll kind of skip the blocking. Maybe I'll do one layer, but I'm going to do a color study first to make sure I get my colors right before I do that. And then after that, I got this big, ambitious piece for of the Grand Canyon, which is another even bigger challenge because I don't usually paint desert scenes or anything like that. So really looking forward to that. But really, when it comes to planning out paintings, I try not to plan too far in advance or I get ahead of myself. So whenever I'll plan 2 paintings, that's about as far as I go, or I can just get ahead of myself because I like to focus on what I'm doing kind of in the here and now. But yeah, I just started this one today for those of you who are just listening. It's 24 by 30, 2 mountain lions kind of descending off of some rocks. But yeah, having a lot of fun with it right now. Every day is kind of a new challenge when it comes to new technique, new brushes, kind of new everything. So yeah.
It's awesome. I've said before on the podcast and in some content, when you're green, you grow, when you're ripe, you rot. And this is just such an exciting time. I think as long as you got a brush in your hand, it's an exciting time because there's an opportunity.
Yeah,
there's an opportunity to learn something new, right? But
definitely,
the mountain lion is something that's very special to you. I know that animal in particular. Now, is the mountain lion in the room? You were telling me before that you had one in a cage that you were rehabilitating.
Well, as of right now, I'm not actually in that room anymore. The mountain lion kind of kicked me out of the room. I am now. Yeah, I was trying to work in there, but he was he was right behind me, trying to focus, but he was always kind of making noise, a lot of noise, kind of growling. He didn't really like that I was there all day. So I moved kind of my studio space into the kind of part of the living room in the house right now. And I'm just kind of painting up here until he moves outside after he's kind of back to health. But yeah, my dad kind of runs the whole mountain lion rehabilitation center, and he's rescued two wild mountain lions in like the past month and a half. One of them, I was along for the journey. The other mountain lion, my dad got a late call about it, and he went up to outside of Boulder to rescue him. We brought him back, and of course, since he's wasn't in very good shape, he couldn't be outside because we're at the tail end of winter here. So he had the only room, the only room available we could put the transport carrier was my studio space. So I had lost like 30% of the studio space I had, and for like a week or two I tried to make it work, but I'm like, okay, it's a little bit of a distraction right now. I just need to focus. So I'm up here. I'm upstairs now.
I want the listeners to picture though in their mind, like, yeah, you would find it difficult focusing with a mountain lion behind you. Okay, granted, it might be in a cage, but
Yeah,
I find that nuts, man. That's so cool. That's so stinking cool. It's awesome.
yeah. I mean, I think the listeners would have to go back to like episode 10 to like, because I think we explained kind of the full story of like the mountain lion rehabilitation thing my
Yeah.
dad does.
Yeah. Let me ask you, like, is it something that, I mean, reference is so hard to come by. So when you're going to be shooting reference for a picture, like what you're painting there, beautiful cat just descending this ridge line that I can see just the beginning stages of. Are
Yeah.
you gathering photographs of your animals that you're rehabilitating?
Well, to be honest, our mountain lions are not the most photogenic. They don't exactly like to pose. If they
Fair
see
enough.
you, they typically, they just sit there and with their ears down. And one of my artist friends, I asked him like, I don't have any mountain lion references right now. Do you have something? Because he goes up to like it's something, I think it's like Triple D or something, and we'll photograph these cats let out, and these cats are kind of trained to like run around, jump around on things, so you can get some really iconic images. So with this particular piece, unfortunately, it's not our cats because it's like they, like I said, they're not the most photogenic. They don't exactly pose and run around in the field. They don't like to do that. They kind of just go out, and if they see you coming, they'll just sit there with this kind of dirty look on their face.
It's extraordinary. It certainly is a unique situation. And just to give people an idea, you live in Colorado, but you're pretty far off the beaten trail, aren't you? I mean, you're living pretty much rural, right? Or up in the hills.
There's people everywhere you look. There's a house everywhere you look. There's roads everywhere. So it's definitely not the same as it was a while ago. So it was definitely out there a while ago, but now it's like, well, everyone kind of lives out here now.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad has been working with mountain lions for like, what has it been, like 25 years, I think.
That's cool. Yeah.
He's been rehabilitating them. So I've grown up around mountain lions since day one. So I'm so used to it now that having like a little wild mountain lion in the studio with me, it's like, oh yeah, well, okay.
So Cody,
But yeah.
it's just such a blast getting to talk to you again. And I kind of, let's go back in time a little bit here, because here you are, you're 19 years old. You are one of the most, talented, driven people I've met, and just for your age as well. And again, man, I'm not patronizing. I'm insanely proud. It's just so cool to know you. But take me back to how this started, because even though you live at home, you got a very tight knit family, beautiful family, but you
Yeah.
are a full-time artist. And I know if you so chose, you could be out there doing it yourself. You choose to live at home. But how did this start for you? How did this full-time gig start for you? Take me back to the beginning of kind of a little bit of your upbringing, your story, and then how you became this just creative powerhouse, for lack of a better way of putting it. because you're producing some knockout paintings. They're so competently well painted. They're beautifully done. Some
Yeah.
really ambitious subjects as well that you handle very well. And now your
Yeah.
work's sought after. You're selling your work. You're selling a lot of work. So give me the picture here, Cody. Take me back to when you first got an inkling of, hey man, I want to do this. This is cool. I want to be an artist. And then how'd you sort of start making those big first moves towards becoming full time?
Well, I'd say in the beginning it was something that kind of just happened and I just kind of went with it. It wasn't like, okay, well, I'm going to be an artist now. It kind of just creeped in and then here I am. So it was like my whole family I live in a very artistic, creative family. So I've always been around it. I've always kind of, done drawing and stuff like that. But of course, when you're really little, you're not really, trying too hard. And then I was like 11-ish around there. That's kind of when I started, like at the time my father had a gallery and I would just be in the back creating stuff. And this was like 2015, somewhere around there. And I'd say that's kind of when it started. I would just grab anything. And he was kind of doing more contemporary stuff. I always gravitated towards more representational landscapes, wildlife stuff like that. And I still have like my very first wildlife painting. It's kind of cringy, but I still have it. And then I started sculpting dinosaurs because I found James Gurney. And my whole younger life, I was so into dinosaurs. When I saw him, he was painting and sculpting dinosaurs. I got so inspired by what Gurney was doing. I started like doing these pretty good sized sculptures of dinosaurs. And I did that for probably 6 months or so. I was like, I think I was 12 at this point. And then when I was scrolling through YouTube and I saw one of your YouTube videos come up, and I think you had like 3 YouTube videos up when I first saw the first one. And I think that's kind of what spurred me into creating, representational wildlife landscape painting. So yeah, it was that was like late 2016, something like that. That's kind of the direction that drew me towards like, okay, representational wildlife landscape, oil painting, not acrylic, because I found that like, okay, I want to do oil painting. I like that better than acrylic. So, every for kind of the first couple of years I just painted. I wasn't like, oh, should I how do I want to make money at this, or how am I going to turn this into a business? It was like, I just painted because I love to do it. And then I started working with a gallery in 2020. So I was working with this art center from like 2018 to 2020. In 2020, I started working with this gallery in Colorado Springs, and I've been working with them since recently. And I've also been working with a local artist here in just outside of Colorado Springs, Dustin Van Wetchel. And that's been like nice because we've done like weekly studio sessions. So I'll go to his studio, get set up and, just do a painting there. And, I think working with one-on-one with an artist has really helped kind of expand my horizons as an artist. And I've learned so many crazy things that like, since I first started till recently, I wouldn't even think to do in my pieces. I'd say since then, it's been like just a constant and never ending improvement and always pushing myself to go a little outside of my comfort zone. So like, well, maybe I want to try that gallery out, maybe a little out of my league, but I'm going to go for it anyway. So kind of being in this business has taught me to be very ambitious and, go for, take any opportunity, no matter how uncomfortable you feel about it, just go into it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I've barely touched the iceberg with where I am now, because every day it's like, I'm always looking at another artist's work. I flip the pages in some of my art books. I'm like, ooh, I like the way that artist did it. Maybe I'll try that. Get to the end of the day, well, that didn't work so well, but maybe I'll try something else tomorrow. Maybe I'll try that again tomorrow. I should always be pushing to improve. So right now it's like, okay, well, this painting is coming out a little differently than a painting I did a week ago. So every painting is a little bit different.
What I'm hearing is a perspective that is quite uncommon, and it's just again, I don't mean to patronize Cody. I really don't. I just again, it's a perspective that's quite uncommon because not many people, have this hunger to improve continually. That constant, never-ending improvement. When I first heard Tony Robbins say that, it's something that I was like, oh, I get that. I could do that. And that's been something that I've stood by since day one, is just finding
Mhm.
some way, something you could do to just make it a little bit better. But it's uncommon. And one thing that you find is that when you get into that mindset, you do continually grow, you continue to experiment, you continue to adapt, move, and change. Art's an exploration, isn't it? And so
Yeah.
this is something I really see you doing. I mean, you're making leaps and bounds in your work. The quality is just, it's gone from strength to strength. I remember saying, and looking at your work way back when, and just saying to Rachel, just like, good night, have a look at this, have a look at this still life with this bison skull, just come check this out, and just being just knockout paintings. But this is the thing that I think not only has helped you, but
Mhm.
it's helped me. It's not something that's just limited to art, isn't it? I mean, I think you could carry this anywhere through your life. Constant, never-ending improvement, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of implies every aspect of my life. It has motivated me, disciplined me, because I see it as like art is serious play.
Oh, I like
You
that.
know, yeah, I've kind of lived by that because it's you're trying to be serious. You want to take it seriously. It is a business, but you're also trying to have fun with it.
Mm.
If you're not enjoying it, it's like, why are you doing it? So uh I've always like, I'd say early on, I just did it. I didn't even think, do I want to do something else? And I'd say recently I'm like, okay, why do I enjoy doing this? What really excites me about it?
Mm.
And I think, oh, why would something else excite me? Like, does snowboarding excite me? Does being a barber excite me? No, not really. Um, and it was always like, I can't really put my finger on. It's like, this is exactly why I enjoy painting. It's just something that I've been drawn to and that I do every day with a lot of with just constant excitement. And yes, some days I'll come up to the easel, I'm like, well, don't really want to do this today, but I'll get into it. And when I turn the music on or podcast or whatever, half hour later, hour, I'm totally into it. I get into the routine of like, okay, if I'm not going off running errands or got a show or something like that, I'm here painting. So it is rare where it's like, I just don't feel like painting today, because I've just trained my mind where it's like, okay, if I know I can be in the studio, I'm going to be in the studio. And it's weird how it's like, it is the past couple of days working up here. I've like completely lost track of time. Yesterday, or it was the day before, I think I had the longest day working behind the easel. And I guess for some reason, being in a different studio space has like given me kind of a new clarity. Like I'm all of a sudden way more productive, because
Wow.
the studio space I was in, I've been in there since I started. Like
Mhm.
our very first Zoom call in 2016,
Mhm.
that's where I was. And I just came up here recently. So every piece I've ever done has been in that room. So like the other day I started at like, I think it was like 8:15 in the morning. I went straight into like 5 p.m. And I'd say for every artist, it's a little different. But for me, it's like, 9 hours is a long day for me. A normal day for me is usually like 6 hours, something like that. 6, 7 hours is a normal day for me. Depending on the project. Like this project, it's got me thinking. Like I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it every like every minute during the morning until I pull up to the easel. And some projects are like, okay, yeah, I'm painting a bison, and then my mind is completely somewhere else the whole time while I'm doing it. But I'd say if I'm thinking about it a lot, that means I'd say, okay, I'm onto something. Usually I'm always like, okay, I have to do a block in for every painting I do. But then it's like, well, every time I get to the end of the block in phase of the painting, I kind of wish it was done. So it's like, well, what if I skip the block and I just do a study to make sure my colors are accurate? And I go into the final painting, match the colors to my study to make sure my colors are right. and just kind of do a one layer top to bottom, kind of like what Mark Majori does, where it's kind of a thinner layer of paint with texture here and there, but it's mostly one layer of paint. Every day it's a brand new challenge. Every day, every time I pull up to the easel, it's like, how do I want to mix the color? How do I want to apply the paint? Do I want to use a Tisch dagger, or do I want to use just a filbert?
Of course.
So
no, the Tisch dagger, of course.
well, I just got myself back into using that brush. I've had several in there that I haven't used, that I bought, have never used. I'm like, okay, I'm going to use these, and I'll tell you, they're transforming my paintings. It's like painting grass. It's now kind of fun now, because that's just the brush. You like all these textured marks, the grass, rocks. It's like,
that's cool, right? Yeah.
I've been using just like flats for the past couple of years, and I'm like, okay, what if I use a dagger here? What if I use a filbert? It's like, oh, I like the marks I'm getting here. And I found myself not even using a flat now. I do for the bigger, blockier shapes, but now it's like I'm using all kinds of different brushes now, which is opening me up to making all kinds of fun new marks. Like today, I was using this, just a choppy old brush. Yesterday, I drew this thing up yesterday. I'm like, okay, how do I want to paint the grass so it looks textured, but I'm not, getting out of hand with the thick paint and palette knife. So I went down into a drawer. I'm like, that'll work. I'll chop it up. That'll work.
Just for the people that are listening to the audio version of this, Cody's holding up a trimmed fan brush. It looks like it's just been beaten to heck and trimmed around all with you're mean to your brushes, sir. No, but I do that trick. I love that trick too. It gives such an interesting mark, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. And, I'd say as much fun as I have caking on the paint with the palette knife and stuff, at the end of the day, I'm like, great, why did I just do that? And I end up having to scrape it all off. And I've had more days I've had so many of those days. So it's like, I got this little piece that I started experimenting on, just based on my trip to Glacier last fall. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to kind of treat this as an experimental piece here. And it's like, I don't think I've ever learned so much from a little study piece. And I'm not even done with it yet. But I'm like, I started doing all kinds of stuff with textured brushes, but still keeping it kind of controlled, keeping the paint under control. And I'm like, oh, that's how I kind of paint this stuff with this mountain lion painting, because this is the second time I've done this. Wow. Because it drives my dad crazy, by the way, because I'll get into a project, and if something really isn't working, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to start over. This is ridiculous. And I do it more than I should, but I'm finding that if I do a study, I don't run into that problem. So I don't have a ton of patience when it comes to the preliminary work leading up to a painting. It's like, I just want to get into the painting. So I did this little 12x16 study. Just knocked it out in a day. I can grab it so you can get a better idea of what's happening.
Let's have a closer look. And again, just for the people listening to the audio version, we're just getting a glimpse now. Cody's grabbing this study off his Pashad box, and it's a mountain lion descending some rocks here. Beautiful. Oh, gorgeous. Yeah. And so your preliminary work, I mean, this really does allow you to know that road ahead, right? And the painting that you're doing is with hindsight. But listen, man, look, me too. When I want to rush into the final painting all the time, and every time I do that, I swear, I kid you not, every time I do that, I always regret it, because I'm like, oh, I could have done this, or I could have done that, or this just isn't working. But you work out those bugs little, and then it gets much easier when you go to work on the bigger piece.
Yeah, that was still wet.
Cody, I love the way you look at things, brother. I really do, because you've got this positivity and this enthusiasm for your craft that just comes through when you talk about it, when you describe it. And I appreciate that so much. Like, dude, I'm telling you right now, you fire me up about painting, because you're eating up with this. I mean, even if you have to scrape something off the canvas, I mean, what is that? I mean, you could beat yourself up about it, but just hearing you talk about it there, you don't. You're just like, no, it's about the painting. Cody, man, I gotta say, I love the way you look at things. You mentioned a couple of things there as well that I wanna come back to, but you've got this positivity and this enthusiasm for your craft that it fires me up about painting too. And it's interesting to hear you say, like, when you run into that wall of wanting to scrape the painting off, right, and get rid of it, and just like, oh, just start again. You don't seem to be looking at that in a way where you're beating yourself up about it. I would beat myself up about that, and I have before. I'd like to think I'd handle it a little better now, but it's just like, oh, no, it's all good. We'll just start again. But it's about the painting, isn't it? Yeah, that's so cool, man. That's so cool.
It's funny. I remember the very first time I did that, where it was a big painting of the Grand Tetons, and I didn't know much about the acrylic to oil paint ratio. So you could put oil over acrylic, but this was a recycled canvas. So there was, I think it was acrylic, oil, and I went over the oil with acrylic gesso, and I did not know at the time, and this was probably like late 2020, I want to say. And so I didn't know that when there's oil, you can't put acrylic over the top of that. So I started work on this Grand Teton piece, and I can't remember how I discovered it, but I was doing something with the palette knife, and my palette knife dug right into the gesso layer, and I just popped the gesso layer off in one place. You could see the painting I went over, and I'm like, oh, I'd say everyone else was like, kind of felt pretty bad for me. Like my whole family felt really bad for me. And I'm like, well, why don't I just do it again? I think everyone was at the time was pretty surprised that I was doing that. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll do it again. I can do it better. Right. That's kind of how I look at it, is like, if I'm going to do it again, it's going to end up looking a lot better than the first time I did it. The first time I did this, I don't know what's in store for the rest of the piece, but for what you could see now, I got that kind of upper half mostly done. And then there's this little rock right there. And in the first version, it was kind of rounded, flat, too soft. And I worked on it for probably 2 or 3 days. I just did this today, and I worked on that rock for probably, I don't know, 2 hours from start to finish. And it's like, then all of a sudden, oh, I nailed it. It's like, well, I learned a lot in the first version. So instead of 2 or 3 days, it took me 2 or 3 hours. I try to avoid it when I can. So now I'm like starting to understand the importance of the preliminary work, the studies, like what I showed you. Yeah. Okay, this is going to help me. Yes, I get impatient. I want to get into the big thing, but just do a study. It'll only take a day. And it was like, okay, just a day, just to sort things out. And usually it's a full day to get a design together. So this piece is made up of 3 different images, the landscape and the 2 mountain lions. And I learned how to use Photoshop from Van Wetchel, because he's worked with Photoshop since Photoshop became a thing in like the late 90s. So he knows the whole thing inside and out, and that's how he designs his pieces. And for the listeners who don't know who he is, go check out Dustin Van Wetchel, really amazing wildlife painter.
We'll link to him in the show notes as well. Yeah. Awesome. Shout out to Dustin. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been a great mentor of mine over the past couple of years, and he's really taught me a lot about, design and composition in a piece. Like all these things where it's like, I never really thought like, okay, don't have like a big no is having a line exit the corner of in a piece. And I would do that beforehand and I wouldn't even think about it. So it's like, okay, if any line is coming in, change its trajectory to the side or down. Don't have it go into that corner. So now, before that, I was like, I would design something and not really think about composition. But now it's like, I evaluate the composition everywhere. So it's like, okay, I don't want this line running down the middle. I need it slightly off center. Okay, the main focal point kind of in the middle, but 60, 70% of it is on the right. So I'm good there. So that has really helped me put my designs together. So I'll have a bunch of photos laid out, and I'll it's kind of a cut and paste thing, but get on Photoshop and I'll do a Photoshop thumbnail, and it's just something thrown together. And this was one I did on the road. I was heading over to Scottsdale to see Mark Majori's show last month.
Oh, cool. And how was that, man?
It was freaking awesome. Yeah, I've never been to Scottsdale, and it being winter, like in mid-March, it's still winter here.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Scottsdale, you go there, it's like 70 degrees. It's amazing. You get a break from winter. So I had an awesome time down there. I met Dustin at the show. We had a great time there. I met Mark, which he's a really cool guy. And it was a multiple day trip. And usually with these trips I take, it's my dad and I. We kind of travel all over the place. So going through Santa Fe to drop some work off at a gallery, and just in the hotel room, and I'm like, okay, I need to do a mountain line. What could I do here? And I just break out my laptop and I'm like, 2 mountain lines. That's unique. 2 mountain lions kind of interacting with their environment. Okay. And I literally threw the whole thing together in like 5 minutes. And, it still needed a little bit of work. So when I got back, I just kind of tweaked it a bit. So it's like originally the mountain line was not up on that little knoll. He was directly behind him. So that's really the only thing I changed. So yeah, design, kind of looping back around, a design can take, about a day for me, depending on how complex it is, but it's usually a day of designing. And now the importance of studies, a day for the color study, and then a day to kind of get the linen ready, get it drawn up, toned, all that. So it's kind of like 3 full days until I can get into the painting, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that much time at all. I'm constantly changing with what I'm doing here. So it's like I'll go through this period of time where it's like, okay, all I want to do is 48 by 60s. And then, paint all those paintings come out great. And then it'll kind of just stop. It's like, okay, why are these big paintings not working? And then I'll do the same thing on like an 18 by 24 and I knock it out quickly and it comes out great. So at this stage, I'm still kind of in the beginning stages of where you'd say in my art career, but compared to like a lot of these other big names who've been at it for 50 years. So, I'm still like really early on in the process. So I'm constantly shifting to one thing or the other, different sizes, different subject matter. So, like I said, I think earlier on that I'll be doing this big scene of the Grand Canyon. I've never painted desert scene, Grand Canyon before, but I've done a study for it, and I'm glad I did the study, or the final painting. If I just went into that, it would have been a disaster. Having a really solid design to work from and a good color study to work from, I've found that's like it helps tremendously with the final painting. That it goes much more smoothly. You have more fun with it, but doing the color study helps kind of work all that stuff out. And if I'm struggling with a color, I put my study right next to my palette, and I'll just try to, kind of get a color close. So if it's like a rock, okay, that's a tricky color. I got to try to match it to what I did in the color study. And most of the time I'll have the colors close to what the study represents, but it's like, that needs to be a little bit brighter. This needs to be a bit punchier. Mm-hmm. So, that works out, 95% of the problems. But you get into the final painting, everything gets amplified. It's all so much bigger. So, I make a lot of changes kind of during the middle of the process.
It's wonderful to kind of hear and get a glimpse of how you're putting these paintings together. I want to ask you some things to do with the business side of art, because this is something that I'm quite curious about. I'm just blown away again by your trajectory so far. I mean, here you are, you're now represented by galleries, and I know you might be kind of between things at the moment, but you've been represented by reputable galleries. How did you first kind of make your approach and get that? Because there's a lot of artists out there that, and I get this message all the time, Tisch, how do I get represented by a gallery? How does that work? How did it work for you? And what advice would you do it differently now? Or what advice would you give to somebody who really wanted to get represented by a gallery in this day and age?
Well, I mean, every artist's approach is very different. And for me, the gallery method has worked very well. All the galleries, like I know some artists don't really like, the gallery takes 40, 50%. I've only encountered 40%, fortunately. And, I price my work kind of accordingly to that. And when I like I said earlier, like, when I first got into the art center, it was like you could just walk in the door, sign this thing, and they put your work on the wall. And that was really good for me in the beginning, like just to get my foot in the door. And then, I was with them for a while, and then kind of my last hurrah with it was the Manitou Art Center, just outside of Colorado Springs. My last hurrah with them was a one-man show, and I think it was like their biggest show they ever had. They sold almost all my work, so it was like, I think it was like their biggest show they've ever had. Yeah, and then I got in. There was another gallery in Colorado Springs that I got into. The owner, I had a article. I think it was the Gazette, which is kind of the Colorado Springs newspaper, I think. The owner saw it, really liked what he saw, brought me in, and I was with that gallery till recently, and I've started to branch out quite a bit. I'm now represented by a gallery in Santa Fe called Legends of the West Gallery. I've been with them since January, and they have been really good to work with. And I have a one-man show coming up with those guys at the end of July. At the end of July, we could discuss more of that at the end of the show. I kind of tried the YouTube and Patreon and all that, kind of like what you're doing. And because it was still kind of new to me, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get into this. And I got into YouTube. And this was probably around 2020. I think I started a YouTube channel, and I put out probably a dozen videos, a little over maybe 15, 16 videos. And I was really getting into it, kind of a couple of videos in, but then it's like, okay, I don't know if the video thing is really for me, because I just want to paint. I just want to paint, get my work out there, and people to kind of get my work in front of people and continue painting. So it's like, I think that's when galleries started becoming more. It's like, I think I'm kind of more of I'd say old school artist who paints for galleries, does big shows, all that, kind of like a John Banovich. And, it kind of sucks in a way, because, I have a YouTube channel, and I have like something like almost 3,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Cool. I haven't put out a video since in like 2 years. I haven't put out a video. So it's like my channel continues to grow, but I'm like, I haven't put anything out. And I may go back to it. I already have one. Recently I thought I was going to go back into it, but kind of changed my mind a bit. So I have a video of a recent piece I did, kind of just sitting there waiting to be edited. But I'm always leaving the door open for that. I may go back to YouTube. I may even try Patreon. But right now I'm trying to focus on putting majority of my focus on getting better as an artist, and throwing all my attention on how to get just better at my craft. So I have the one gallery in Santa Fe, and I'm looking to say, okay, looking at Jackson, okay, what galleries are up there? What could I look at in kind of that area? What about the Denver area? So, constantly looking for new avenues. But, galleries have always worked out, I'd say it's worked out pretty well for me. But I've also been here and there. I'll kind of plan a trip. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go talk to these 6 galleries. And, I don't go in with, paintings under my arm saying, I want to be represented.
That's my trick. Don't do that.
Well, one gallery suggested I kind of do that. It was a little awkward, I'd say, so I didn't do it again. I just go I'll just go visit half a dozen galleries. I just say, could I get your opinion on my work? And I'll just, I'll have my computer with me. And because when you walk into the door of a gallery, you don't really want to make it look, I would say you don't want to make it look like, that you're an artist coming in seeking representation, because I always get the impression, if that's what you look like, person at the front desk is going to look up and be like, oh, great, here we go again. So I'm like, I just want to casually walk in, look at some of the work on the wall, don't really give off the impression that I'm wanting to get into the gallery or anything. And then, I'll walk up and talk to whoever's at the front desk. If it's a gallery I I'm looking at like saying, okay, I really want to be represented here. Like going around looking at some of the galleries in Scottsdale, I went into a lot of them and I would walk around like, this isn't really, not really my vibe. So, I had a lot of that. So I'd always walk around and make sure like, is this a gallery that, I'd fit in? And then if it is, I'd keep it very casual because initially I'd sound very, robot kind of a sound, like very rehearsed. Like I rehearsed everything that came out of my mouth. So now it's like, okay, I need to sound more relaxed. Like I'm just kind of casually bringing it up. So like, I'm just a young artist from Colorado. My name's Cody, kind of a thing. Just keeping it super casual. Could I get your opinion on some of my work? So it's like, I think it's different when you say, could I get your opinion versus could you take a look at some of my work? So, and I'd say half the time it's like, no, not at this time. No. It's like, okay, thank you. And then the other half, it's most of the time that the other half of the time it's they want to take a look, and they give me their feedback on it, and then usually they direct me to some other gallery. And I've only started doing this because I was with that one gallery in Colorado Springs for a little while, and just this year has been like, okay, this year is going to be different. I gotta challenge myself, put myself in uncomfortable situations, do something, do things I've never done before here. So going out and talking to galleries, I've never really done before. It was only like in January that I started doing that. So, and then like, I will sometimes submit my work through like a gallery website, but sometimes like, that hasn't really worked. Like I'll just submit my work. Most of the time I don't hear anything back. So I think it's always good to go to a gallery in person and present yourself. I know you've brought up kind of like the pros and cons of being with a gallery. And, being with a gallery, like if they do a really good job at what they do, they sell your work, they're really nice to work with, and they sell your paintings. It makes it so you can spend more time actually working on your painting. And, they kind of, they handle like, shipping the painting to like, if someone bought the painting halfway across the country, they handle the shipping, sending it there, and you just get a check in the mail. So I'd say, the gallery route has always been like, I've always preferred that route over like, the video making or just selling direct, like, people contacting me and then wanting to buy directly from me, because I think some people, if they want to buy a painting direct from their artist, they think it's going to be cheaper, but it's kind of the same either way. So
well, I think it has to be, right? It has to be the same either way, because you got to maintain market value. Sorry to cut you off there, Cody, but I think what you said there is just so important. And I hear this all the time, and I've had clients that have tried to discount the prices or work with me direct, going, "Oh, I'll get it on the cheap." It's like, well, hang on a second. If I give you the discount, I'm going to screw that person over there who paid full price as well, and myself, because you're trying to achieve a particular market value with your work and maintain that market value. People have got a lot of hangups about money and all that stuff. So let's put that to one side. But it's so important that you maintain that, and a discount could really kill that. And so that's you're doing it the right way, bro. Like it's smart. It's smart. Maintain that value, even if it's direct or through a gallery.
Yeah, I mean, most galleries, they do offer discounts, but if they're a good gallery, they'll like, they'll call you and say, these people would like a 10% discount. Is that okay? And most of the time, if they want a bit of a discount, I'm good with it. I've had galleries just give people discounts and not tell me. And then it's like, why is there 10% missing out of this check? And they'll just give these people discounts and they don't tell the artist. And I've had that happen to me. And that's usually like, if they call and ask me about it, I'm more inclined to say, yeah, you can have a 5% discount. But if the gallery just goes ahead and gives the discount, doesn't really tell the artist, then I'm like, that's not really being honest here. And I've had that happen before. So, I found social media to be a great platform to kind of market and promote these things I have at these galleries. So as of right now, I'm heading up to Jackson in like a week and a half to talk to a bunch of galleries up there. And it's kind of just like I'm going up there talking to them. Don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I'll work with a gallery up there. Maybe not. I don't know. But I'm kind of open to all avenues here. And I think some artists rejection can kind of hit them hard. I hear a lot of younger artists who they maybe want to get out into the gallery market, but they don't want to be rejected. And usually that keeps them from actually doing it. So, going out there and kind of just getting used to it, because, in life, you're going to get rejected. And, I've literally visited almost every gallery in downtown Scottsdale. It was either I got a no before they didn't even look at my work. I would just ask them, could I get your opinion on my work? And they're like, no, not right now. Or you go into galleries and they're willing to look at your work, but they're like, oh, well, maybe go over here. Maybe they'd like to show your work. So I went through all of downtown Scottsdale. And that just, if anything, it's just a big learning experience, because it's like you learn to be more resilient. Not every gallery is going to take your work. So even for me, it's like, I'm intimidated sometimes to go into these other galleries, like these bigger name galleries. It's like, okay, these guys might be a little out of my league, but what's it hurt trying? Nothing's going to happen, but there's no hurt in trying. But I don't even really call it rejection, because it's more of just like, if they say, no, we don't want to represent you, it's like, okay, then you probably think you wouldn't be able to sell my work. And, both of us wouldn't want that. So, you want to go into a gallery where, they're confident they could sell your work, and, they're good to work with. And, you both respect each other in the business relationship. But, just for me, it's like the gallery method has worked very well. It makes it so I don't have to deal with all kind of the nitty stuff on the side, where it's like, okay, great, I got to spend half the day in front of the computer. It's like, okay, from sun up to sundown, I can be behind the easel. Giving the gallery 40%, it's like, well, I think they deserve it based on like all the other stuff they do just to get, the work sold. I think it's well worth it. So I'd say initially it was kind of hard. It was like 40%. That's a lot. But now I look at it as, well, I think with how much they do to, promote it, sell it, ship it to wherever in the world.
Yeah, it's a service, right? They're providing a service for a fee. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So, to any young artist who wants to kind of get out into the art world, going to like, smaller galleries, if you're kind of starting, or like the arts center I mentioned, just a way to get your foot in the door, because that's how you kind of get notoriety, you get recognized, and then it'll kind of take you from there. So I might still do video stuff on the side, and maybe at some point in the future it could blow up to be a bigger thing. But as for right now, it's like, okay, galleries, I really want to make this gallery thing work, because I see the value, I see all the value in it, and I see what it can do for me. So I'm going to run with that for a little while and see where it goes. And maybe in the next couple of years, maybe I'll start up YouTube again. Maybe I'll start Patreon. Well, right now nothing is a guarantee. So
well, let me ask you about that, because we're at a very interesting time right now, being, as of recording this call, it's early in 2023. And the world is a very interesting place. There's all kinds of geopolitical stuff going on that we don't need to get into. Just turn on the news, what's going on. And there's some economic stuff that's happening. Now, I know from the past that anytime you get a little bit of a wobble in the market or the economy, this has a flow-on effect. Does that concern you? Do you factor that into your thinking? Again, just going back to, you're a positive guy. You're incredibly driven, but we can't deny that there is stuff that's going on that's beyond our control. How are you going to brace yourself against some of the stuff that could affect that sector? Have you thought about this?
Well, I'd say even right now that's happening to me, because kind of since I started being in galleries have sold my work, it's been kind of consistent for me. And as of like 6 months ago, I think I've really felt that kind of wobble. I'd say from last fall to now, it's been pretty low I'd say in the art market. So you kind of predict that's going to happen. So, you have a big show, you sell everything, and you kind of have prepare for those down times, because as an artist, that's going to happen. You're going to have a period of the year where you sell, 6 paintings a month. And then you'll go a period of time where you go 6 months and not sell a single painting. And that's kind of the reality of being an artist. So I've kind of been waiting for that to happen. Recently it's like we've not had really a dip like this in recent years. And, like you said, like kind of last time, as far as I know, kind of something like that happened was like in 2008, but I was, what was I, like 4? So
Wow. Well, that one got me.
I wasn't even aware it was happening. I was too little to understand it. So, it's kind of the first time in my lifetime where I've been aware of it. And I've kind of been waiting for it to happen. And I think it's kind of here now. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to freak out about it. I've been kind of planning on this happening, where things take a big dip. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to focus on creating the best work I can do. Maybe get a show ready, kind of get some things planned, work towards those things. Don't worry about trying to sell paintings right now, because, when you do really good work, the business will follow. I have that show coming up in July. It's like, okay, I don't need to sell a painting between now and then. I just need to focus on that show. And if I do, great. So right now I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna hang tight. I was kind of preparing for this. So I'm just gonna do the best work I can do right now. And
quality.
Then once
Focus on quality.
Exactly. So, when I have half a dozen paintings and that comes back up, I'll kind of have kind of a new line of stuff to present to the public once that kind of comes back up. And, right now it's kind of hard to say when that'll be.
Let me throw something in the mix there, Cody. Sorry, but let me throw something in the mix, because you've mentioned something there that's so vitally important. You're controlling the things that you can control. You're not worried about this stuff going on outside, but you're focused on the thing that you've got right now under your direct control. And
Right.
I love that you're a glass half full guy. That you're looking at this from an optimistic point of view, because there's a lot of people saying, this is it, this is the crash, it's never coming back, it's going to go down the tubes. But here you're like, no, this is what happens. I was planning on this, I was predicting this is just going to happen. And so it'll dip here, and then it'll come on back up again. I do also, because I was there, and I was aware, the whole thing happening in 2008, and the whole flow-on effect for us in Western Australia, it didn't really hit real hard until a few years later, with a resource downturn. And I've spoken about that. But the thing is that at that time, people were saying it's never coming back. People were like, this is it, this is the crash, it's going down, it's not coming back. And it's just interesting to reflect on that now. Look, none of us have a crystal ball. I have no idea what's happening now. I think there is going to be some sort of reset. They're calling it great. Okay, if you know what I'm talking about, congrats. But if you don't, maybe look into it a little bit. What is the fallout from that thing going to be? And I do think, though, just from my perspective, I'd love to get your take on this, but anticipating change is absolutely vital for surviving, as an art business, as a business person, an artist, a creator, a professional. Anticipating that change, you do have to kind of predict a little bit. It's gonna change. Do you know what the change is going to be? Well, maybe not, but one way that I've found that I've been able to weather multiple storms now is through diversification. Now, what does that
Mm-hmm.
mean? That means that for every single painting you do, for me, if I'm going to do a painting, my question is, how many times can I be paid for this painting? Well, in one sense, when you make that painting, you're thinking to yourself, well, I sell the painting. Okay, I make my money once. Okay, what if you do
Mm-hmm.
prints? Now you make your money twice. And then
Yeah.
as soon as you go online, you're like, oh, what if I have online content that comes off the back of that painting? Well, now you're making money three times. But that online thing, you can, if you're clever, you can multiply that. And I'm not saying I'm clever, by the way. I think even a blind hog finds a truffle once in a while. But I stumbled across something there with my work that I found, oh, diversification's key. So when the change happens and it wipes out a sector, or it wipes out an industry, or it really shakes things up, if you still have something to stabilize. And so
Yeah.
Cody, diversification for you, I mean, it might look a little bit different. It might be that you're not exhibiting just in Santa Fe or just in Scottsdale or just in Denver. It's actually all three of those or multiples.
Oh yeah.
That's diversification in a way too, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm heading with it. And, Prince, I think that's very likely to start happening pretty soon. But, I've had a lot of people ask me about Prince, and that's something that I'm going to do, but it hasn't felt like the right time to do it yet based on where my work is. But the one thing I'm focusing on is, I need to stretch kind of all over the place here, because I'm like being in one place. It's like if anything happens to that gallery, boom, gone. If I have like four different galleries in that, stretched across, Colorado, Wyoming, Arizona, then it changes things. Like being diverse with how I present my work is very crucial, because like if something happens to one gallery, it's like, okay, well, I still have these other three galleries. I'm
Mhm.
okay. I didn't just lose everything. And I think over the past couple of years, up until recently, when I was just with one gallery, that was kind of a concern of mine, because if anything happens to this gallery, what am I going to do? And recently I've realized the importance of diversity with how I'm going to, display my work. Where am I going to display it? What's the best places to display my work? Because I wanted to go into some very modern contemporary gallery. That's probably not going to be
Ooh.
the space for me. As young artists, I think going all over the map and diversifying where you put your work is very, very crucial, because it gets your foot in the door in so many places, and you start to get a lot of eyes on your work all over the place. If you're kind of in my position, or a young artist just kind of just starting out, like I said, starting in one place just to get your foot in the door. But while you're doing that, go to several other places in different states, kind of do whatever it takes to go to all these
Awesome.
other places, and, you know, to kind of get more people to see your work. And, initially, like I said, you'll get probably a lot of rejection, but, as you keep improving, you'll start to encounter less and less of that. So,
Well, let me ask you about that, because that's something that's so important, I feel, and I get asked about this a ton. You're a confident guy, Cody, and I'd say that it almost sounds like it comes naturally. But for a lot of people that email me and a lot of messages that I get, a lot of people just have trouble making that first approach to begin with. It's like just to go to a gallery and face the thought of, no, thank you, not right now. That's mortifying for a lot of people.
oh yeah.
How would you, because to you, like I'm just hearing you before, it's like, no big deal. Next, I'd like to think that I've been able to do that in recent years. But when
Mhm.
I first started out, I was a shy guy. I was terrified. And then when I was rejected, it pissed me off, and I got hurt and bent out of shape about it. But how do you do that? How do you cultivate this confidence that you have? Is that something that you just have naturally, or do you think it's something that somebody could acquire as a skill, maybe work on and develop? What would you say to that? To just helping somebody just to make that initial approach to begin with, and not be afraid to hear the no's.
I'd say for me, it's always been like I feel like of what I can remember to kind of approaching galleries or like I said, I mean, approaching galleries, I haven't been doing it for that long, but any other thing related to promoting yourself and getting out there can be scary for a lot of people. And for me, I don't think I've really had like fear of it. It's always, for me, it's kind of come naturally. Like, I don't really remember a time where I was kind of like I was kind of scared to do it, or like I kind of feared, well, what if I hear no? Like, it's of what I can remember kind of in recent years of kind of promoting myself, my experiences with galleries. It's kind of always come naturally to me, but for a lot of people, a lot of artists who, maybe are a little unsure about approaching a gallery, all I can really say is, like, if you know that's what you want to do, you just do it. And like I said, initially it'll be scary, and you don't go into your very first gallery kind of, maybe you don't intend on getting into that gallery, and maybe, yeah, you're shaking in your boots, but like you're gonna start building up that confidence. So, a dozen galleries later, you're feeling pretty good about it, even though you've heard a dozen no's. You've built up that confidence to keep pursuing it. If you've gone into 12 galleries and something hasn't happened, maybe like kind of look back at your work and kind of evaluate what you're doing. But, after quite a few galleries, you're going to start building up that confidence.
So nothing fancy. Just do it. Just get out there and just do it.
I'd say that's kind of my advice. And, even initially, I think it's good to contact, like, if you want to, get in touch with the gallery. Like, for me, most of the time, I've just walked in, and, that's worked out in some cases. Sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's in the beginning, it's a good idea to, send these galleries a, very well thought out email. I think sending them an email, then getting in touch via email, and you start having these conversations back and forth. I think going into the gallery, it's not as scary. It's just a matter of getting in there and building that confidence. And I think ultimately that's the best way to do it, is getting into it. I don't think there's really any like secret way. If you do this, then you'll be confident. You just got to get into it, and that's how you build the confidence.
So, Cody, this is such an exciting journey that you're on. I've just been just amazed watching you from when you were starting out, when we first started talking when you were 12, to
Yeah.
where you are now as a 19-year-old. Just an incredibly talented guy. Your work ethic, your drive, you inspire me, dude. So what's next for you? What are some of the things you're really excited about? Where are you going with your work? What's on the horizon?
That's kind of I'd say a trickier question, because I a lot of the time I'm like such in the here and now with what I'm doing, that sometimes I'm like, okay, whoa, what am I doing what am I doing in the next month or two? But yeah, no, I still like put bigger goals on the horizon. So, you know, I have more lengthy goals that I'm working towards, that I like, in terms of big shows and everything. So as for like painting, it's like, I really want to take it a step further here. And I know it's like, it's just there. It's like, because every couple of years, I kind of take this step with my work, and it's like, oh, I could just see it. What's the next big step for me? Because usually it's like, it's kind of a painting that kind of just happens. It's like, oh, this is it. So maybe who knows, this could be the painting. But it's kind of trying to find a rhythm with my work, because right now maybe it still seems a little clunky with my process. Like, I don't really have a process where it's like I pull up to the easel and I kind of know how I'm going to paint this tree or how I'm going to paint that rock. It still feels a little undefined, a little clunky with how I approach it. So, I'm really working hard towards finding a rhythm in my workflow. And I think that's like the biggest thing I'm pushing for right now. Is, I mean, it maybe seem kind of small on the outside, but every time it's like, okay, how can I approach this where it's going to go smoothly? I'm not going to be so unsure about it. I'm not gonna be like, is this gonna work? Isn't it? I just go into it. I'm like, yeah, I can tackle that tree, no problem. Like using that as an example. So trying to find a smooth rhythm in my workflow is a big one for me right now. And like I said, it kind of seems smaller, not a very big goal on the outside, but it is really like the main thing I'm working towards right now. And then like, of course, every piece I do, creating the best work I can right now to go into galleries. And I think right now, because I know I'm going to go talk to all these new galleries. It's like, okay, I really got to blow their socks off here. So I got to do the best I can do, the best I'm capable of doing. And that is really motivating me to not be kind of in the marsh with it, just like barely moving along. It's like as soon as I have like, a show or a reason that I need to create really good work, I snap right into it.
Brilliant.
So, so I have that one-man show coming up, and it's like, okay, I know kind of a theme for what I need to do for that. And I know how much time I have, which granted isn't a ton of time. And I know how I need to get it done. So that kind of kicks me into high gear. And it's kind of, and also having fun with the process, like going out and talking to all these galleries and hearing, you get rejected or you get accepted. You just have fun. I just try to have fun with the whole process.
Enjoy it. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. And as for right now, I'd say those kind of two big things are the things I'm really working hard towards.
Awesome.
And after that, it's like, well, we'll kind of see what happens after that. But I'm still early in the journey here. And I don't want to spread myself too thin and try to focus on 1,000 different things at the same time. Because if you focus on too many things at the same time, each one of those things might be done kind of average, mediocre. So I try to focus on no more than 2 to 3 things, so I can really put as much focus on those things as possible, so I can do as good of a job as I can with it. So yeah, it's at this stage, I'm just trying to find a really smooth workflow where I come into the studio, I feel fresh, and I know when I pull up to the easel, this is how I'm going to approach this painting. This is how I'm going to tackle it. And there isn't as much uncertainty. So I'm trying to kind of eliminate all the uncertainty that I've kind of dealt with whenever I come up to the easel, because I always have like, well, what if I approach it like this? What if I approach it like that? What if it's a lot of what ifs. I'd say a little too many what ifs. And then I can kind of drive myself crazy with it. So trying to be more just, and that's kind of also where confidence comes in, is just going into it and, seeing what happens. So I'm kind of guy who just dives right in and I'll see what happens. I don't want to overthink it. So
I hear it. Yeah. That's awesome, man.
In my situation, it is a little unusual to have someone my age doing what I'm doing. And for a lot of people, it can be a little daunting to go into being an artist, especially at a younger age, if you're in your teens or something, some people maybe don't have the support behind backing them up or anything like that. But, I'd say if there's any well, do I want to do it? You just got to do it. If there's any little thing just saying, well, do I want to do it? You just got to do it. And, I'd say it takes you some pretty crazy places when you're really ambitious with it. And if you decide to get into it, become really good at it. Just do the absolute best you can. And yes, there'll be some frustrations along with it, but that's part of the process. And just getting into the process, just looking at, absorbing all the other information, look at the greats, look at the masters, and learn from them, and also learn from the people who, the artists today, that maybe you can even go to their studios and see what they're doing, just get it super inspired, but with what's around you, because talking to other artists, seeing other artists' artwork in person, maybe even seeing their process with how they do it. I think having, for any young artist, to have a mentor is really important. Because I think that really helps anybody's trajectory as an artist, is, to have, you have your other resources, you learn from other artists, but having a mentor to work with is really important, because that's how you can pick up on some really important knowledge from working with an artist for like 6 months. It's amazing what you'll learn.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
you just kind of go all in, no hesitation, because because I think a lot of young artists, if they're 16, 15, something like that, they have some hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
And just going all in on it, like just be super ambitious, do everything you can, and most importantly, like sit behind that easel and work your butt off and become as good as you possibly can. And ultimately, success will follow. People see that you are committed to what you're doing and can see that you are just getting better by every painting. They're gonna like, and I'm kind of more referring to galleries here, like if they see that you are committed to what you're doing, they're gonna say like, okay, well, kind of like in my situation where, okay, well, his work is like this now, but imagine what it's going to be like in 5 or 10 years.
Good night.
So once anybody sees that commitment, they're going to be more willing to work with you, to represent you, to sell your work, rather if it's a mentor or a gallery. In the initial stages, you don't have to go fancy. Just get some paint, get a canvas, get what you can, and just start working. And over time, you'll start building, like I said, more confidence in what you do. You're going to start building discipline, because I think being an artist is a really good way to discipline yourself in kind of all walks and all aspects of life.
Interesting. Okay.
Because if you treat your art business seriously, but like I said, you still have fun with it. You don't treat it too seriously. That's going to kind of go throughout all aspects of life. You're going to be productive in the morning. You're going to get up early. You're going to get in front of the easel early. You're not going to stop till the sun goes down. Once you kind of get into that mindset of like that's how you run your business, it kind of goes throughout all aspects of your life, and ultimately will just make you more of a ambitious, confident individual. And I think that's what being an artist has really helped and contributed, is just helping me be more confident and ambitious in what I do, and kind of all aspects of life.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Cody, you fire me up. You fire me up, man. I want to go paint something. I just really appreciate this time. And this was cool, having a chance to catch up with you again and record it for the
Definitely.
podcast and get just a little bit more of a glimpse into your world. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Cody, for being on the Creative Endeavor.
It's been a pleasure, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. A huge shout out and thank you to Cody Oldham for joining me. Now, once again, if you're not already following Cody on Instagram, make sure you change that right now. Go and follow him at Cody_Oldham_artist, and on his website at www.codyoldham.com. So inspiring to have this opportunity to catch up with him once again. And I'm looking forward to bringing you another installment, another conversation with Cody right after his show in Santa Fe. We're going to hear all about it and how that show went. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, then please do me a huge favor. Leave me a rating or a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. It makes a huge difference to the show. I really appreciate that so much. Now, if you want to find out more about me, hear what I'm up to, and get the latest, then make sure you visit andrewtischler.com. That last name is spelled Tischler. And also, while you're there, pick up your free copy of my studio guide. That's oil painting techniques with yours truly. All right, I'm going to get out of here and get back to painting. It's been an absolute pleasure having your company here in the studio, and I'll see you again in another episode of the Creative Endeavor.